Welcome to the Larry Elder Show, brought to you by my friends at YREFI. Invest in America's future like I do. What a week! Israel gets slammed at the Oscars. What's up with those red so-called ceasefire buttons worn by the Hollywoodites at the Oscars? The Oscar DEI requirements. The battle between ABC's Stephanopoulos, and Republican Nancy Mace, a rape survivor. Stephanopoulos asked her, "How could you support Trump?" Biden says he regrets using the term illegal, and the White House spokeswoman, however, denies he apologized. My encounter with a Trump hater, and a little something for people who snore. All of that and more.
Hooray for Hollywood. That's gooey ballyhooly Hollywood.
These are the DEI requirements issued by the Academy of Motion Pictures, aka the Oscars, that they have to meet in order to be considered for Best Picture. They are in 4 standards, as they call them. Standard A. Requirements can be met in one of 3 ways. 1, either one or a significant supporting character is from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. At 2, at least 30% of the acting ensemble is from at least 2 underrepresented groups: women, the LGBTQ community, disabled or deaf people, or people from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. 3, the storyline centers on an underrepresented group. Can you just imagine how they're going to start hiring people? This is a scene from a movie that you probably didn't see called Putney Swope, directed by Robert Downey Jr.'s father. The CEO of a large corporation just dies. So the board of directors, who are all male, all white, with one exception, had to vote for a successor. Now, they all wanted to be the new CEO, but the rules prevented them from voting for themselves. So they passed a hat around the table. You wrote down the name of the successor. Again, you couldn't use your own name that you wanted to be the next board member. So almost all of these board members put the name of the person they thought would least be likely to be chosen, the sole black board member whose name happened to be Putney Swope. A board member then read the results.
1 for Elias. Swope. 1 for Bissinger. Swope. 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 That's it. 1 vote for Elias, 1 vote for Bissinger, 9 votes for Swope.
Swope! You don't have to accept.
Didn't quite work out. What, you ask, makes YREFI so different from other investments? Let's quickly break it down. YREFI offers a secured collateralized portfolio with a strong fixed rate of return, up to 10.25%. There is no attack on your principal. If you ever need your money back, you can get it back. You are in control. You can let your investment compound daily or take income, whatever you choose. There are absolutely no fees, and an investment in YREFI is an investment in America's future. I am an investor. So simply call 888-YREFI-24. That's 888-YREFI-24. And when you call, you will not get a sales pitch, just the info you need to see if YREFI is a better option for you. Or log on to investYREFI.com. That's invest, the letter Y, then REFY.com. And make sure you tell them Larry Elder sent you. Back to the Oscars DEI requirement, Standard B. Films must meet one of 3 criteria: at least 2 creative leaders or department heads, including casting directors, cinematographers, composers, and more, must be from an, wait for it, underrepresented group. At least 6 crew or technical positions must be from an underrepresented group, or at least 30% of the crew must be from an underrepresented group. Gee, I can't wait for the remake of Schindler's List. Now to Standard C. The film production, distribution, or financing companies must offer paid internships or apprenticeships and training opportunities for people from underrepresented groups. By the way, after they offer these paid internships or apprenticeships or training opportunities, do they have to also offer you a job? Apparently not. Finally, Standard D. The film studio must have multiple senior executives from underrepresented groups on its marketing, publicity, or distribution teams. This raises a question. When do underrepresented groups cease being underrepresented? What's the magic percentage? What I find interesting about all of this, we're talking about Hollywood, an industry that put the woe in woke. I mean, you can barely survive in this industry if you are an out-of-the-closet conservative, but the wokest industry in the country apparently considers itself to be insufficiently woke. I once saw one of those "You're a Victim" public service ads that said, if you want to be it, you must see it. This apparently is what's driving the DEI Oscar requirements, meaning there must be some visual representation of someone who looks like me, in the movies. Otherwise, you really cannot realistically aspire to being what you want to be, right? Now, this is a third-year MIT nuclear engineering student where, according to her classes are 50% women and 50% men. But
sometimes it's surprising when I go off and venture away from MIT, go to a work conference or a meeting, and I look around the room and I see that I'm the only woman in the room. But this happens so often that my female colleagues and I will sometimes count the number of the women in the room to see how many women there are. And often there's only the number of women in the room can only be counted on one hand.
This raises some questions. On how many hands could she count the number of female nuclear engineers when she decided to become a female nuclear engineer? Somehow, some way, she managed to pull it out. And as mentioned, she said that her classes are 50% men and 50% women, which means there are a boatload of women in the pipeline. Now, for years, I hosted a nationally syndicated radio show, 300 markets, including every major market in America. As far as I know, I was the first black person to have such a broad-based show. Who was my role model who looked like me? I didn't need and don't need to see somebody black to do something before. I think I can do it, for crying out loud. Who was Jackie Robinson's role model? Before him, there were no black players in the modern major leagues. Why, what on earth made him think he could do it? Who was Sidney Poitier's role model? Who were the female role models for race car drivers Janet Guthrie and Danica Patrick? We could go on and on and on. But long after it's been clearly established that there are people of color and women in virtually every field, the bean counting obsession continues. A few years ago, the Los Angeles Dodgers were in the World Series. One of their players is a guy named Mookie Betts, who happened to be black. He was a hero of one of the World Series games. Watch this.
Well, Mook, when you get to the World Series, everything's magnified. And one of the things everybody's talking about across the country, you're the only African-American player in the World Series. So when did you learn that, and what are your thoughts when you think about that?
Learned it just now.
I learned it just now. Hadn't occurred to me until you brought it up. This brings us to Phil Ivey, a poker star who happens to be black.
Has race been a factor at all?
Has race been a factor? No. Not in poker. In poker, they only see one color, that's green.
So who was Phil Ivey's role model? After all, in order to be it, you must see it, right? How many black poker superstars do you know? To quote the MIT nuclear engineering student,
can only be counted on one hand.
Did it stop Mr. Ivey?
No.
And who's going to call rapper Lil Wayne the black face of white supremacy? I give you rapper Lil Wayne.
Where are we in the United States of America in race relations and what you see from day to day in your life?
Skip, they wouldn't want to ask me that. They wouldn't want my answer to represent it because God knows I have been nothing but blessed. my whole path. These 33 years have been nothing but a blessing. I have never, and never is a strong word, I've never dealt with racism, and I'm glad I didn't have to. And I don't know if it's because of my blessings, I don't know if it's, but it is my reality. So I would have to say, not only did I thought it was over, I still believe it's over, but obviously it isn't.
So you've never experienced any offensive behavior from any other color or?
No, sir.
Wow.
But they keep bringing it up, especially guilty white people. I have said, whoever said that compound interest is the greatest force in the universe never encountered white guilt. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers NFL football team hired a black coach. Coach, you're black. Does that give you a special bond with the other underrepresented black coaches in the NFL?
You and Mike Tomlin are two of the few black head coaches in the league. I wonder what your relationship is like with them and your thoughts on Steve Wilkes joining that fold.
I have a very good relationship with Tomlin. We don't look at what color we are when we coach against each other. We just know each other. I have a lot of very good white friends that coach in this league as well, and I don't think it's a big deal as far as us coaching against each other. I think it's normal. Wilkes got an opportunity to do a good job. Hopefully he does it. And we coach ball. We don't look at color.
But no, that wasn't enough. After all, to be it, you must see it, right?
But you also understand that representation matters too, right? And that when young aspiring coaches or even football players, they see you guys, they see someone that looks like them, maybe grew up like them, that has to mean something.
Well, when you say you see you guys and look like them and grow up like them, means that we're oddballs to begin with. And I think the minute you guys stop making a big deal about it, everybody else will as well.
Aspiring coaches or even football players, they see you guys.
You'd keep your mouth shut if you knew it was good for you, buddy.
Now back to the Oscars and this business about underrepresentation. The premise seems to be that in order for people of color to feel good about themselves, they need to see people who look like themselves on movie screens. Really? Are you aware that for decades, studies have shown that black young people have more self-esteem than do white young people, and far more self-esteem than do Asian Americans? Black women, even though they're more likely to be overweight than white women, have a greater self-esteem and greater happiness with their own bodies. But how can this be? Chinese Americans, by the way, and Japanese Americans, despite supposedly being underrepresented on movie screens, earn more on average and have higher household income on average than do white Americans of European ancestry. But how can this be since they are underrepresented on the silver screen?
What's happening, hot stuff?
How about we do this? How about Hollywood focus on the business of making, movies that people want to see? And now with the advancement of technology and various other means of getting production made and out to the people, the ability to make your own movies, your own content, has never been easier and more achievable. So, as Nike says, just do it. One more thing about the recent Oscars. Notice all those little round pins some men and women were wearing on their lapels and on their dresses?
We're late. The Palestinian protest shut down the Oscars tonight. Humanity wins.
Stars at the Academy Awards, including Billie Eilish, Mark Ruffalo, and Ava DuVernay, made a statement by wearing red lapel pins, calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict. The pins, featuring a hand around a black heart, symbolize collective support for an immediate end to the war and the delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza civilians.
According to Yahoo Entertainment, the red pins were a creation of a group called Artists for Ceasefire that featured a hand and heart logo on them. Artists for Ceasefire is an association of film, music, TV industry advocates, actors, musicians, and filmmakers who have united to stop the humanitarian crisis that continues to unfold between Israel and Palestine, end of quote, according to their website. Among those who wore the pins were Ramzi Youssef, Ava DuVernay, Mark Ruffalo, Billie Eilish, Riz Ahmed, Mahershala Ali, Mishan Harriman, among others. But now let's take a deeper dive into the pen and the logo. And notice the absence of yellow ribbon pins, like this one. It says, "Bring them home," referring to the hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza. Didn't see a single one.
We're back with an update on protests outside the Oscars. Demonstrators carried signs and demanded a ceasefire in Israel's war in Gaza. They tied up traffic around the Dolby Theater and delayed some red carpet arrivals by up to an hour. We saw several stars, including singer Billie Eilish, wearing Artists for Ceasefire pins.
As to the red pins, a couple of pro-Israel advocates, Israelis Noah Tishby and Youssef Haddad, among many others, had a massive problem. In a Toronto Sun column called "Hate Propaganda Like Red Pins Worn at Oscars Becoming More Routine," a Canadian commentator named Warren Kinsella wrote, and I'm quoting, "In the Israeli-Gaza context, the red hand is an explicit reference to a photo from a lynching and bloody dismemberment of Israeli soldiers by Palestinians during the Intifada in 2000. It is a celebration of murder," end of quote. This is the red pin worn by these Hollywoodites during the Oscars. Here's more on the red pin.
But the history of the red hand is so complicated, and it's a dog whistle. I mean, a dog whistle technically is a symbol that appears normal to the general public, but is in reality something very specific. And there are two examples of what the red hands could symbolize. One was during the Farhud, which was when a Nazi-inspired program to kill Jews in 1941. Jewish homes were marked with red hands to indicate that it's a family of Jews. But more recently, there was something called the Ramallah lynching. There were these two Israeli undercover agents, and a funeral procession was passing by as they were brought into a police station. Word got out that IDF soldiers were at the El Bereh police station. A mob of 1,000 Palestinians came from the funeral. The rioters killed and mutilated the soldiers, and one of the rioters peeked through the window and displayed his bloody palms on the window. So it's a perfect metaphor for the way messages on social media are misappropriated, because this symbol is so inherently violent, even though all these Hollywood folk think they're indicating a message of peace.
And then there is Oscar winner Jonathan Glazer, who made a film about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism. In his written, meaning he thought this out, wrote it down, his acceptance speech, he said,
"All our choices were made to reflect and confront us in the present, not to say, look what they did then, rather look what we do now." Our film shows where dehumanization leads at its worst. It shaped all of our past and present. Right now, we stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people. Whether the victims of October the 7th in Israel, or the ongoing attack on Gaza, all are victims of this dehumanization. How do we resist? Alexandra Bistron Kaladziejczak, the girl who glows in the film as she did in life, chose to. I dedicate this to her memory and her resistance. Thank you.
Are you nuts? Occupation? Israel pulled out of Gaza in 2005. Gaza had elections, and one of the candidates was a woman who had several sons. At least 2 of them were killed in homicide bombing attacks against the Israelis. And when she ran, she said, "I only wish I had more sons to sacrifice for the cause." She got elected. This is what Israel is dealing with. Mr. Glazer said, quote, "We refute our Jewishness because of a Holocaust that has been hijacked for the occupation," close quote. Are you kidding? He continued, quote, "Right now, we stand here as men who refute their Jewishness," I don't even know what that means, "and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people. Whether the victims of October the 7th in Israel or the ongoing attack on Gaza, all the victims of this dehumanization, how do we resist?" End of quote. You know, Mr. Glazer, there's no conflict, quote, "for so many innocent people," close quote, if the terrorists stop committing terror?
Israel is at war. We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way. But though Israel didn't start this war, Israel will finish it. Once the Jewish people were stateless. Once the Jewish people were defenseless. No longer. Hamas will understand that by attacking us, they've made a mistake of historic proportions. We will exact a price that will be remembered by them and Israel's other enemies for decades to come. The savage attacks that Hamas perpetrated against innocent Israelis are mind-boggling, slaughtering families in their homes, massacring hundreds of young people at an outdoor festival, kidnapping scores of women, children, and elderly, even Holocaust survivors. Hamas terrorists bound, burned, and executed children. They are savages. Hamas is ISIS. And just as the forces of civilizations united to defeat ISIS, the forces of civilization must support Israel in defeating Hamas.
The problem is, let's face it, a lot of people don't want to admit it. There is no daylight between Hamas and the ideology of the majority of the Palestinians. We're talking not just about the hatred of Israel and the desire for its destruction, but Jew hatred and the desire for the elimination of Jews anywhere in the world. It's a bit of a problem. By the way, I am a co-founder of Old Glory Bank. Get a free copy of my new book, As Goes California, My Mission to Rescue the Golden State and Save a Nation. Open an account in Old Glory Bank, and when you get your debit card in the mail, activate it, and you will get a free copy of my new book, As Goes California. Just go to oldglorybank.com. That's oldglorybank.com. Now to the rather heated exchange between George Stephanopoulos and Republican Representative Nancy Mace. Now remember, Stephanopoulos was a top campaign aide to Bill Clinton when he ran for president. And then Stephanopoulos served in the Clinton administration as his communications director. Stephanopoulos began the interview with this clip of Representative Mace on the floor of the House.
From some of us who've been raped, it can take 25 years to get up the courage and talk about being a victim of rape.
And then there was this exchange.
Endorsed Donald Trump for president. Judges and two separate juries have found him liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape. How do you square your endorsement of Donald Trump with the testimony we just saw?
Well, I will tell you, I was raped at the age of 16. And any rape victim will tell you, I've lived for 30 years with an incredible amount of shame over being raped. It's a shame that you will never feel, George. And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me about another potential rape victim. I'm not going to do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald Trump.
No, you are shaming me.
You've endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury.
Can you say hypocrisy? Again, George Stephanopoulos was a top aide to Bill Clinton and stood right by him during accusation after accusation. This is Paula Jones.
I'll just put it this way, that he presented himself to me in a very unprofessional manner, and I would call it sexual harassment.
This is Kathleen Willey.
Mr. President, Kathleen Willey says that you made unwanted sexual advances toward her, and that directly contradicts your testimony. You can't both be telling the truth, can you?
Well, I don't know what she said, but I can, because I didn't see the interview last night, but I can tell you this. Ever since this story came out months ago, and as you know, the story's been in 3 different incarnations, I have said that nothing improper happened. I told the truth then. I told the truth in the deposition. I am mystified and disappointed by this turn of events, but it's been out there for several months, as well as conflicting stories from people who've discussed it with her. So you'll have to find the answer to that riddle somewhere else. But I can just tell you that I have done everything I could do to clarify the situation. I have a very clear memory of the meeting, and I told the truth.
And this is Juanita Broaddrick, who alleged she was raped by Bill Clinton.
Bed behind you?
Yes.
Okay.
And then as he points over my shoulder, he grabs me and turns me to him. And that was a shock. And I try to push him away. And I only weighed probably 120 pounds at that time. He was a very large man. And I kept telling him, no, this is, I don't want this at all. And I'm sure I must have said, you must have had the wrong idea. And he wouldn't listen. You know, there was no way that he would listen to what I was saying. And he grabbed me again very forcefully and started biting on my top lip. And this was extremely painful. I thought he was going to bite my lip off. It was, and that's when he pushed me back onto the bed.
He bit the top of your lip.
Yes.
Pushed you onto the bed.
Right.
And then what happened?
And then it's been so long and it's just so hard to go into. I need to stop.
She appeared on the Bill Maher show this week and again addressed the exchange she had with Mr. Clintonopoulos.
Number one, Donald Trump wasn't convicted of sexual assault. The $83 million was a defamation suit. It was about defamation. There was a sexual abuse claim, and she got a little bit for that, but the vast majority of it was for defamation, not rape, not sexual assault. So I think there are two types.
Is that right, Ron?
That is right.
Let me just say this.
That is right.
Let me, and
but
they
maybe
have
give
had
a heads up
just,
to the rape victim that you're going to talk to her about her own rape when she comes on your show, and that's the first thing you're going to ask. Like that to me, like they didn't do that. There was no, hey, we're going to film this clip, and this clip triggers me to feel like he was weaponizing my own rape for a political hit job, and it was wrong. And my daughter was there. It was awful. I felt bullied. The least they could have done is said, hey, we're going to talk about this, but we're going to lead with it. And it was a 10-minute interview about my own rape. It was completely, I think, wholly inappropriate.
So you go and you get asked a tough question. That's the job of
It was
a
more than that, and you know it was. It was a political hit job. It was bullying. It was rape shaming is what it was. Asked by George Stephanopoulos, a guy that covered for the Clintons for years and called women bimbos. Like, no thank you. No thank you.
Mr. Stephanopoulos, who's accusing Nancy Mace of being a hypocrite for saying she's a rape survivor, but nevertheless is endorsing Trump, was right there defending his boss.
Now, Governor Clinton has a character problem. But I take it that your line of counterattack is that it's well, I mean, he has not denied that he has engaged in marital infidelity. He denied a specific one.
He said that he had problems in his marriage.
That's right, and he has talked about the draft, and to some people it's a character problem.
Bill Clinton's passed his character test throughout his life and throughout this campaign. And he's shown it through his commitments to real fights. And what he's going to do in his campaign is focus on what's important to the American people, on the jobs and the education. That's what the American people care about. They want to move into the future. They don't want to be diverted by side issues, and they're not going to let the Republican attack machine.
Oh, Mr. Clintonopoulos was right there through the allegations made by Paula Jones, by Kathleen Willey, and by Juanita Broaddrick. And he has the nerve to scold Mace. That takes industrial strength cashews.
I'll take a pound of nuts. That's a lot of nuts!
Remember when President Joseph Biden actually used the term illegal in his State of the Union address to refer to illegals?
An innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals?
Now, according to the U.S. legal code, illegal alien is the legal appropriate term. Right, Chuck Schumer?
Illegal immigration is wrong. And a primary goal of comprehensive immigration reform must be to dramatically curtail future illegal immigration.
An illegal.
All illegal aliens present in the United States on the date of enactment of our bill must quickly register their presence with the United States government and submit to a rigorous process of converting to legal status and earning a path to citizenship or face imminent deportation.
An illegal.
We must create a system that converts the current flow of primarily low-skilled illegal immigrants into the United States into a more manageable and controlled flow of legal immigrants who can be absorbed by our economy.
An illegal.
Illegal immigration is wrong, plain and simple.
and illegal.
When we use phrases like undocumented workers, we convey a message to the American people that their government is not serious about combating illegal immigration.
Laken Riley. An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented.
If you don't think it's illegal, you're not going to say it. I think it is illegal and wrong.
Our legal code does not recognize the term illegal immigrant, let alone undocumented immigrant. The correct legal term, once again, is illegal alien. So Biden was right. Right?
Do you regret using the word illegal to describe immigrants last night, sir?
Well, I don't regret it. Technically not supposed to be here.
Yeah, but do you regret, or are you sorry for having used the term illegal?
During your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm not going to do, what I won't do. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect. Look, they built the country. The reason our economy is growing. We have to control the border and more orderly flow, but I don't share his view at all.
So you regret using that word?
Yes.
So he's sorry he used the word illegal, right?
President Biden apologized for calling Laken Riley's killer an illegal. Does he feel like he needs to apologize to illegal immigrants for calling them what they are, or using the term illegal?
Well, first of all, I want to be really clear about something. The president absolutely did not apologize. There was no apology anywhere in that conversation. He did not apologize. He used a different word.
Okay, but where's the apology or regret for saying that the, quote, undocumented built this country, close quote? They did? But I guess so, since they're not really illegal. Indeed, they are Americans.
You know, the 11 million people living in the shadows, I believe they're already American citizens. Teddy Roosevelt said it better. He said, Americanism is not a question of birthplace or creed or a line of descent. It's a question of principles, idealism, and character. These people are just waiting for a chance to be able to contribute fully. And by that standard, 11 million undocumented aliens are already Americans, in my view.
I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy, Yankee Doodle do or die. A real live nephew of my Uncle Sam, born on the 4th of July. I've got a Yankee Doodle sweetheart, she's my Yankee Doodle joy. Yankee Doodle came to London just to ride the ponies. I am that Yankee Doodle boy. He's a Yankee Doodle dandy, a Yankee Doodle do or die. A real life nephew of his Uncle Sam, born on the 4th of July. He's got a Yankee Doodle sweetheart, she's his Yankee Doodle joy. Yankee Doodle came to London just to ride the pony. He is a Yankee Doodle boy.
Tell that to Laken Riley's family, why don't you? Now, a few days ago, after leaving my dentist's office, I punched the elevator button for the ground floor. I was on the 5th floor. The door opened on the 2nd floor. I wasn't even thinking, looking at my cell phone, so I'm walking off, thinking it was the ground floor. I took a couple of steps to walk out, and in my haste, I almost knocked over a woman who appeared to be about 50 years old as she tried to get on the elevator. She was barely 4 feet tall. I think the correct term is little person. I apologized profusely for bumping into her, and then she said, wait, I know you. I said, I'm Larry Elder. I put out my hand to shake her hand. She said her name was Louise. We shook hands, stepped off the elevator, and continued the conversation. She said, you ran for governor. And I said, did you vote for me? No, she said, a little too emphatically. I said, because? She said, you're a Republican. I said, so you would never vote for a Republican? She said, I would never say never. I said, oh, just not this Republican. She said, right. And I would never vote for Donald Trump. I said, okay, what Republican would you vote for? She said, Ronald Reagan. My dad loved Reagan. What, I asked her, are the policy differences between Reagan and Trump? I expected her to say something like, Reagan did amnesty or something. She said, Trump's in poll. So I said, borders were secured, inflation low, gas prices low, mortgage interest rates low, No new wars. Our enemies feared us. Our friends respected us. But you didn't vote for Trump because he's an oh. And then she said, you know, it's more than that. I have a disability. And Trump ridiculed a disabled person. I said, no, he did not. The person you're talking about is an investigative reporter named Serge Kovaleski, whose disability is an atrophied arm. He doesn't shake or gyrate. And this is important, I told her. Now, during the first campaign, Trump said there were Muslims in New Jersey who cheered as the Twin Towers fell on 9/11. Now, for a while, fact checkers could not find any confirmation of this, so Trump referred to a Washington Post article co-written by this guy named Serge Kovaleski. You know, to her credit, Louise was listening. When asked about this, I continued, Kovaleski, in Trump's opinion, backtracked on the story and said he personally did not see Muslims cheering, but that there were allegations that some did. But he said he could not confirm it. So Trump, at a campaign rally, mocked what Trump considered to be his retreat from his own article. Trump didn't mock his disability. He mocked what he considered Kovaleski's cowardice, his refusal to stand by his story. By the way, Kovaleski, I told her, himself has never accused Trump of mocking his disability. Others did, but not the alleged target. Louise said, I didn't know that. And I continued, you know, there's a website called Catholics for Trump. It shows several videos of Trump using this shaking gesture. He did it to mock himself, as well as to mock an able-bodied general. It is just not true that Trump mocked a disabled reporter. But a poll taken before the 2016 election, I told her, found among people who don't like Trump like you, this incident is the number one reason people gave for why. She said, I didn't know that either. I said, Louise, let me ask you something. Do you really think half the country would be okay with a politician who mocked somebody who had a disability? You know, I have a liberal friend I've known for 40 years, I told her. We used to be very, very close. He is a son with special needs. He is convinced, as you were, I told her, that Trump mocked somebody with a disability. Now we can no longer talk to each other. You know, Louise said, you're making me think. And I must tell you, I'm Jewish. And I like the fact that Trump's daughter married a Jew. I said, not just a Jew, an observant Jew, and she converted. And Louise said, I know. I said, okay, how do you feel about the way Biden and the Democrats are pressuring Israel into a ceasefire after what happened on October the 7th? She said, it angers me. I happen to know 2 people who were killed. I said, guess who the Israelis consider perhaps the most pro-Israel American president ever? Donald J. Trump. He moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, something that neither Obama nor George W. Bush did, even though they promised to do it. Cut off funding to the Palestinians for being, as Trump put it, anti-peace. And he did the Abraham Accords. She said, okay, you're right, you're right, you're right. You make me think. You know what? Now I wish I had voted for you. You're cute. I said, you're cute too. Mind if I take a selfie of us? She said, not at all. So I bent down and I took this picture. And then she said, after I took the picture, thank you for asking permission to take the picture. I said, for asking for permission? She said, you'd be amazed how many people see me walking down the street, whip out their phone, and take my picture as if I'm some kind of exhibit in a circus. I said, well, there are those. Finally, a little something for all you snorers out there. This one's for you. This has been the Larry Elder Show, brought to you by my friends at YREFI. Invest in America's future like I do. InvestYREFI.com. And remember, we've got a country to save. See you next time.